The burned grassland tonight was not loud, only the silver bridle strap hanging from the post and the unblinking eyes of a man. A limping Cheyenne woman stepped onto the porch. Behind her were 3 hunters. A cold choice. Trade a horse for a life. By morning, only a strip of hide remained. 2 cold bowls, a bundle of bitter herbs, and a scar hanging silent on the post. The worn silver bridle hung on the porch post. The leather was cracked, its edge darkened by old sweat. The bit's clasp was scratched, one side flashing a thin streak of fire as the sun slid across. The wind passed very softly. The mouthpiece clicked once, dry, then went silent, as if swallowed into wood. No horse stood there. Only the faint salt of horse sweat clung, thin as the breath of someone just gone. After those, Coven the Ed, I wondered to Tildum. Ol wondered Tildum. Raring wondered. He wert. And I said related to the woman, and here to wondered, to John wife make, we just killed up, and I always the swy, and psych from, and I splack. And I went him bean where rolled signed, you I have the ears, like Alyssa silent. The roads loose as dashnal, on the door's hook, a straw hat hung upside down. Its brim was broken in one piece. The sharp edge had cut rope from feed sacks once, in haste. On the table near the window, 2 spent shells stood upright. Then, night before, someone had set them in line. Jonas shifted the tin cup slightly, then set it down again. The bottom clacked once against the wood. The sound carried into the house, touched chair, wall, then stopped at the saddle hanging on the second hook. He did not speak. He only blinked very slowly, like sand spilling through fingers. I turned my face out to the plain. The barren stretch in the distance split the sun's weave into separate plates, each plate like a sheet of tin set out. From its far edge someone walked in. At first only thin dust curling the ankles, then the lean ankles themselves, then the torn hem of a skirt brushing dust, like chalk drawn gray over air. Her feet touched ground heel first, then toe, trained to leave no sound. The left heel faltered each time it landed. Her eyes stayed down, never sweeping sideways. A Yasha redbird came closer. Her hair, cut at the shoulder, frayed by old fire, stuck in broken directions like a bird's feathers against wind. Her right cheek bore a narrow scar, sharp as a knife mark on wood. It was not red, not raised. It lay flat, like letters carved into a board no one would rub down to fade. She did not lift her head. Her left hand hung loose at her side, 2 fingers pinching a torn strip of cloth. Her right hand hung open, folding and opening with her limp. She wore nothing. She carried nothing. At the edge of the porch shadow, she paused half a step, caught between sun and shade. The broken-heeled sandal left one mark, then none, as the back never touched. She looked down at the strip of light cast by the bridle. The strip struck her eyes for a moment. Her pupils shrank as if saving a blink. Jonas did not turn his head. He set the cup on the 3rd step, pushed it with his boot against the post so it would not be kicked. He reached behind, touched the bucket under the rain funnel. His hand rested on the handle, but did not lift. The pump beside it was bleached, its grip broken at the knob. Someone had once wired it tight, then left it. The spout bled 1 drop, slow as hardened fat. Ayasha moved another half-step. Her skirt brushed the strip of light, shook once like a fish, lifted, then dropped back. She stood still. Her left shoulder dipped first, dodging some old blow. I saw her shirt lift at a patch mended with coarse thread. The stitches were close but rough, hands that sewed without a good needle. The crow shifted on the wire. Rust flaked under its claws. falling on dry grass like fish scales. It croaked once. No one answered. In the barn, the horse pulled in a breath, like a man coughing but swallowing it down. Jonas put his hand on his knee, pushed himself up. He rose very slowly, so his back made no sound. The tin cup slid a fraction, stopped where its rim pressed his knuckle, fell heavy. Each step nailed itself into the ground. He reached the edge of shadow. The space between him and her was the length of a bridle let slack. He did not speak. He only tilted his head slightly, as if listening for grass bending elsewhere. I drew my hand from the post, let the grain of dust fall from my fingers to the floor. The dust grain dropped into the strip of light. It disappeared as if into water. The smell of damp wood mixed with old leather. I thought of the gun hanging inside, but did not look. Here, a gun was known without looking. Ayesha raised her left hand, 2 joints. She set her fingertip on the step's wood. Her skin was sunburned, still streaked with fine ash, leaving a trace like soot rubbed by hand. Her nails were short, cut uneven. Her ring finger split once across, now closed. She kept her hand there. She did not knock. She did not ask. The hand only drew in a little cold from the wood. Jonas pushed the bucket clear of the pump's shade, set it flat on the ground. He tilted it, ear to the hollow ring of metal. No drop. He turned his eyes to the pump, then back to the bridle, a breath away. The bit's mouthpiece now faced her, like a small scratched eye. He reached, touched the strap's end. His fingers slid the back of the leather, smoothed by hands, sweat, rain, and sun. I heard Ayesha's breathing change, not louder, only less rigid, like someone lifting a stone from a sack, the sack easing a little. She tilted her head, the scar on her cheek catching sun, shifting to silver gray. She looked exactly at the spot where the bridle touched the post. A small spider had just strung its first thread between leather and wood, not yet cast the cross line. It hung in air, legs taut. The wind leaned through, drawing the thread into a thin bough. From the far plain, a metallic echo returned, very faint. Not enough to tell what it was. Could be fence posts striking. Could be a shackle hook dropped. In this land, such sounds pass through an ear like strangers pushing a store door, opening and closing before anyone looks up. Jonas heard. He did not change his face. Only his hand squeezed the softened strap, making leather whisper like oil paper tearing. Ayesha did not look at me. She looked at the step, at the crack in the wood where a horsehair stuck. The hair had dried, twisted into a word unreadable. She pushed her shoe tip near it, did not kick. She only exhaled one breath longer, then shortened at once. Not take it. She placed her right hand on the step's edge, near the bowl. The hand trembled once, unseen, felt only in the faint ripple across the water. She drew it back, set it on her knee, clenched the torn cloth. The cloth was dry and stiff, like salt paper. Jonas stepped back once. He turned half his face away, leaving the edge of his clouded green eye, dry lashes. He looked toward the barn. The horse blew heavier through the slats than before. It smelled the stranger. It smelled the bridle not on its neck now, but hanging outside, in another's hand for a breath, then strung up again as if nothing changed. I heard the fence wire hum one longer note. The crow flew straight down, picked something, then lifted, leaving a shadow streak across the sunlit yard. That streak swept over the porch step, pressed against the bridle's light strip for a moment, fusing both lines into a strange color without a name. Then the dark streak went. The light remained. The bridle still hung. Ayesha drew a breath. She stepped one more half-foot forward, the hem of her skirt brushing the cooled tin cup. One bead clung at its rim, dropped, bursting a black dot on the wood, round as a nail-head. No one spoke. The house door stayed cracked, leaving a line of wind to pass through, straight to the table, to the shelves, to the saddle hook, then out the back, lost in dusted light. Jonas tilted his head toward her. He set the tin cup one step higher, apart from the ceramic bowl, like laying down two marks in an unfinished line of speech. He touched the bridle again. This time, not the softened back. He touched the chipped bit. His fingertip came away smudged black. He wiped it on his pants, leaving a faint streak. Ayesha lifted her eyes once, only to his knees, to the coarse cloth with its smear, then down again. She shifted weight on her leg. The scrape of ankle bones met each other, like two pebbles rattled in a cloth bag. She released the torn cloth, set her hand on her chest for a second, like fixing a skewed shirt, then stopped. On the barren ground she had crossed, the wind slid through, leaving faint blade-like marks. There were hoofprints burned thin by sun. There were shovel scars on hard soil from another season. No new smoke. No whip of horse. Only the thought of another trail soon to spill here. Not yet. That thought lay on the bridle's worn silver, waiting, kept. I drew my foot off the step, giving them room. Eyeshadow lifted from the strip of reaching. Which edge cuts too much, which is too torn, which must be bound again. He pressed his hand into the air between them, then lowered it, like a carpenter measuring a cut not yet made. Ayesha stayed standing. She leaned her body further from the sun, half into shade, so the strip no longer struck her eyes. The bridle's old leather scent told her where shadow lay. She stopped exactly there. A mosquito droned, circled the bowl, then left. The buzz was so small it stayed in the ear, not the air. The house door shook once as the wind shifted. The saddle creaked faintly. The horse in the barn answered with another breath. Ayesha touched her fingertip to the bowl's rim, tested its cool. The water quivered a line. She did not drink. She pulled her hand back, set it at her hip, holding a loose thread. The thread tore free, dropped on the step, did not fly, lay still like a white hair. The worn silver bridle stayed there. Its shine had changed. The sun slid from the clasp, leaving it ash-gray. The strip of light on the floor thinned, shrank, retreating half into the lower step. It looked like a sunken scar. To the unknowing, only an ordinary beam. To one who rode, it was the weight once of a head, a neck, a road. I looked at Jonas. He knew. No one spoke a name. No one asked from where. On the table, the two shells still stood, taking one more layer of dust. At the edge, a dull eating knife lay askew, its tip pointing to the door. It was unrelated, yet it lay there, showing some vague direction. I thought of hands that would touch the bridle soon enough. Then I stopped. This was a time for silence. Ayesha sat on the lowest step, 1 foot from the strip of light. She set both hands on her knees, palms down, nails pointing inward like 2 sheathed arrows. Jonas stood, his shadow falling over her shoulder, touching the strip's edge. That shadow split the strip in 2. then fused again when the wind turned. At the porch's rim, dust rose briefly by a cricket's run, then lay flat as if done. I heard something far away, or I thought I did. It was like iron striking iron, but the wind carried it off. The barn door sighed once. The silver bridle no longer trembled. It only hung. Everything gathered there, the old sweat scent, the dull silver, the bit's dry click, the shrinking strip of light. I knew a day began when that light touched the step, then slid away. Today, it touched the eyes of someone just awry. Her short nail showed an old crack. I saw the water in the bowl ripple once around, then lie still. Jonas did not tell her to drink. He stood tilted, his back locked in one place so the shoulder would not bite. His coarse collar was frayed, showing sun-hardened skin like bark. He looked at the edge of the wood, not into her eyes. The porch light cut narrow slits across her ankle, the limping one. A dirty green bruise clamped her bone like a rope once tied and ripped away. The wind brought damp earth from the stove corner. The barn door gaped a slit. The horse breathed through a faint hiss like dust blown off a tin lid. That sound crossed the bowl, stirred the water once, then fell into silence. No one asked a name. Ayesha set her fingertip on the step's edge. Brown skin met bleached wood. She held it there, like pressing a note, without wanting sound. Her eyes went to the window, where two shells stood upright. Between them a new line of dust, fine as a white hair. It ran from table's edge to the shells, then stopped, as if someone had drawn a finger through. Jonas bent, lifted the coarse rag at the step's end. He used it to wrap the pump handle from heat. He turned it, found a cleaner side, folded it, set it on the step near her ankle. He did not say, "Set your foot." He only drew his hand back, the knuckle joints popping faint with age. Ayesha looked, did not move. Later, she hooked the broken sandal heel from earth, set it half upon the rag. Not all. Just enough to keep bone from wood, the bowl still there. The sky cleared once, dropped light into its mouth, made the chipped rim shine like a blade edge. I saw Jonas reach, turn the bowl so the break did not face her. He drew back his hand. Across the back of it was a dark welt from rope's long rub. That mark sat exactly where the pulse beat. A clang of iron on iron somewhere down the dirt road. Not close, thin, like two worn coins struck. I turned my head. By the fence, fine dust lifted a shallow swell, then sank. Two riders came out from yucca brush. Not bounty men, neutral coats, soft leather satchels, guns slung low. Town patrol. Jonas's horse caught it, stamped once. The barn door rattled. It did not whinny. It only pushed one breath toward the gap, then stopped. Ayesha drew her foot from the rag, a half measure, as if to leave room for sound to pass. The two did not ride up. They stopped where the sun still lay full, their hats coated with dust. Their spurs ticked faint, mosquito thin. The left one tugged his no detail. They ask at every camp the same. Black hair, thin scar. He stopped on Ayesha's cheek. Did not hold long. You know. Jonas did not say no. He put his hand on the porch post at waist height, as if to test it still stood. He held it long enough for dust to cling in sweat, then let it drop. The left man pressed lips, tipped his hat, moved his horse. The hoofbeats drummed in steady time of men leaving marks, but not words. Their dust blew into Ayesha's skirt hem, then dissolved. I heard the latch strike the hinge once dry. The wind turned. The light strip on the step shortened. The bowl no longer flared. Ayesha looked at it, but did not reach. She drew her skirt to cover the bruised knee. Her eyes went to the pump shaft, where wire had slipped a loop. She plucked a thread from her hem, wound it tight, did not press the handle, only fixed the loosened place.
Jonas gathered the coarse rag, folded it, set it down by her foot again, straighter. He slid the cooled tin cup against the post, so it would not be kicked. The motion slow, final. No coaxing words, no questions. Deed first. In this land, when bad news still rode a saddle, men kept silent. Ayesha shifted seat. She drew into deeper shade. Her right hand pressed her left knee, the lame one, holding it down, like keeping a small bird from flapping. The scar on her cheek caught fading sun, then dulled. She breathed out, thin as air through basket reeds. On the table inside, the two shells did not move. But between them, the dust deepened half again, as if someone had breathed straight into it. Evening stretched with fence shadows. A dark shirt and torn skirt lay there, not on bodies. Jonas carried out a wooden basin, set it under the pump. He worked the handle. Water spat short, cloudy, iron-smelling. He dumped the first, drew the second, washed the rag. He did not hand it to her. He set it on the rail, left wind and dust their part. Night closed over the barn, before the porch. The horse stepped back, leaving two dark eyes, catching the stove's faint glow. Jonas lit a small fire inside, not to cook, to drive mosquitoes. The smoke trailed thin, slid through the door crack, wrapped her legs on the porch, then faded at the second step. Ayesha shut her eyes once, opened them, looked down at dust, now thick enough to cover old
Smoke. On the wire fence, a shirt and skirt hung still. Wind tugged the edges with a flapping sound, but did not lift them. They were pinned by two bent iron nails, driven through cloth into wood. Wash water had run in two slant lines, stopping at the wire's knot where rust had eaten deep. Ayesha was not on the porch, not in the yard. I saw the wash marks drying, leaving a pale crust of salt on the posts. That salt caught sun in passing, not like metal, but like sweat dried. Jonas came out, looked at the fence. He paused half a second, then went straight to the close. He touched the nail, its bent end, not tight, ready to spring if the wind turned. He twisted it further, bare hand. The iron bit into skin. He did not pull back. A bead of blood welled on his finger, dark red, slid a short distance, stopped at an old line of dirt. He wiped it on his pant leg, leaving a faint smear. On the step the ceramic bowl was dry. The old water stain drew a short gray ring, like the eye socket of a dried fish. Jonas lifted it, turned it sideways, set it face down. The turning made no sound. It only raised the dust at the rim, drifting a handspan before settling again. On the stove, an iron pot lay open, empty. On the table, the two shells stood as before. But now a long black hair lay between them. I knew whose. The turn came like that. She had not left. The clothes pinned to the fence spoke for her. No promise needed. Objects said it, staying. Here, that was how one's foot settled, without weight of words. Jonas entered the barn. He touched his horse's forehead lightly, at the hollow between eyes. It exhaled, hot. He pulled the saddle down, set it on the rack, began checking each ring. Not the bridle. He went straight to the girth strap, running his hand along the leather for tear. Still sound. He threaded the latigo, pulled it. The leather rasped through the ring like a knife dragged over dry hide. He gave it one more notch, stopped. Not tight enough to pinch, not loose enough to slip on stumble. He worked his hand under the horse's belly, felt around, touched the shed hair, matted like dry moss on stone. He slapped the flank once. The horse shivered its hide, shaking dust loose like fine rain. He hung the canteen on the horn, checked the cap, no leak. He opened the chest by the wall, took a sack of cornmeal, stuffed it in a cloth bag, tied it with 2 loops. He moved without a blink, like reciting prayer already known, but knowing each word for its use. I stood at the barn door, looked across the plain. On the far dirt road, one thread of dust stood straight, like hair back. He did not speak. He did not ask. He only reached, took the coarse rag from the nail, folded it square, put it in his chest pocket. The rag was still damp at one corner. The smell of last night's wash clung. Ash, iron water. Smell of staying. Ayesha appeared at the house corner, noiseless. She held a bundle of hay, struck it against the step to shake dust. Dust fell like a small cloud, then split like fish scattering at a passing shape. She watched Jonas tighten the saddle. She did not step in, only glanced once at the dust thread crawling the road, then bent, picked up the black thread fallen from her skirt yesterday, rolled it on her fingertip like a word not yet used. Jonas stepped onto the porch. He stood a moment in shadow for his eyes to meet sun. His face did not change. Only the bridge of his nose widened with breath. He passed the overturned bowl, did not kick it. He passed the cooled tin cup, lifted it, poured the dregs, set it upside beside the bowl, like placing 2 stones to make a nameless gate. He stopped at the second step, looked straight at the dust thread. It was lower now, spread flat. They were not here yet, but they were coming. No one asked where he would go. No one told her where to hide. The answers were already in the tightened girth, the clothes pinned on the fence, the overturned bowl, the folded rag in his pocket. Here, force needed no shout. It went by dust, by leather rasping rings, by a man looking far without a word. I stood in the doorway, heard the ground tense like a drumhead, and in that silence everyone had chosen their place without speech. Night came without warning. The wind shifted, drew dry grass scent from barn to porch like a thin blanket. The heart in my house was only red coal, shells cracking faint, like teeth clenched in dream. On the wire the clothes hung stiff, their hems tapped faintly, not heard unless an ear tilted. Jonas's horse stood still inside, pawing sometimes, leaving shallow grooves filled at once by falling dust. I sat with back against the door frame, half in shadow. Jonas on the step, back to the post, eyes half open, clouded green as if through the porch toward something unseen. Ayesha lower down, her hands on her knees, her fingers holding a black thread rolled from her hem. No one spoke, not for lack of words. Here, men let things speak for them. The night stopped in the middle, shoulders like two stones stacked. His beard was thick, greasy with cheap fat, crusted white with dust like salt. He spat dark onto the ground where moonlight had not yet reached. Silas Briggs stood on the left, collar open, his left hand trembling a small beat like a cricket in a jar. Nolan Pike was younger, skin taut, his nose hooked like iron. His eyes did not blink when he leveled the gun. 3 barrels lifted together. No voice said stop. No voice said come out. Only 3 black lines aimed straight at the porch, ready. The breathing inside the house changed pace. Ayesha did not move. Her hand twisted the black thread tighter. It snapped faint but did not break. Jonas did not rise at once. He only tipped his head a fraction, enough to see all 3 muzzles in one frame of eye. A paper flew from Kern's hand, not thrown hard. He let the wind carry half the way. The paper fell slanting, its edge fraying in the gust, tearing one strand. It slapped down on the porch dirt, slid a little, stopped at an old rain mark. Its surface gleamed with grease prints, letters blotted black. A face sketched rough in charcoal, strokes hasty, resembling no one but the drawer. The scrawl beneath, reward. The sum not large, enough for a poor horse, not enough to buy silence. Kern glanced at Jonas. He did not smile. He only jerked his chin toward the barn. Your horse, his voice hoarse with dust and contraband liquor. Silas sniffed once, ran his tongue across his gun barrel, not threat, only dirty habit. Nolan said nothing. His lips were thin. Moonlight circled his nose in a white band. He shifted the gun muzzle half an inch, fixing Jonas's chest like pinning a fly to a wall. Jonas rose like lifting cracked timber. He stepped down 1 step, stopped on the second. The coarse collar scraped his neck, made a dry rasp. He did not pick up the bounty slip. He did not need to read the name. Here every drawn face was the face of all. He lifted his eyes, skimmed the 3 riders, stopped at the gap between them, where the road to town cut the plain like a scar. Kern growled, "Trade the good one. Keep the house whole." He pointed with the muzzle into the barn. Silas grinned, gold tooth flashing once in the dark. "Or hand her over." His words fell light as a pebble, but rolled far. Nolan added nothing, both his hands steady, finger where it belonged. The wind slid across the porch. The fence wire hummed long, passing through gunmetal, through mouths, resting in ears like a clamp. The horse in the barn stamped once, tugged the rope short. It knew nothing of paper. It knew only strange scent, and the master's eyes turned another way. Jonas turned his face slightly toward the post. There the worn silver road dust with human skin. His hand did not shake. But I saw the vein rise high at his wrist, like rope drawn through a pulley. Ayesha stayed low. Her thumb pressed the thread into her palm. Her eyes stayed on the step, where moon carved a slit like a knife mark. The scar on her cheek did not shift shape, only sharpened silver. She breathed through her nose once. No sound. Kern dipped his barrel. "The horse," he repeated, nailing the word into the night. Silas tapped his gun butt on his boot. Tack, tack. The sound like first rain on a tin lid. Nolan lowered his chin, shifted weight to stirrup, left leg sliding half an inch, then coiling back. A motion small, seen only by standing in the same shadow. Jonas slipped the strap from the nail. The bit's mouthpiece knocked the post once, dry. The sound not loud, but it rang memory in every horse that ever wore a bit. Go. He wound the strap once around his hand, not tight. He stepped down the last step, past Ayesha. His shadow crossed her knee for one breath, then left. She did not lift her head. Her hand pressed the step edge, nail to grain, holding a tremor still. Kern did not rush. He knew the pace of the other man. Men who tie straps do not hurry. Men who unfasten them go slower. Silas flicked a glance at me. I did not move. I was porch lumber. Nolan drew in shallow, reminding his body it was still there. Jonas reached the barn. He slid the bar, left a gap enough for a man. The horse turned, eyes wide dark on him. He did not stroke its head. He only set his hand between its eyes 1 second. The heat from its forehead clung to his skin, thin as oil. He looped the rest of the strap across its neck, drew it to himself. The leather rasped, not pain, the sound of parting. On the porch, the wind flipped the bounty slip, its blank face lifting. A coal from the stove dropped, burned slow, bored a small hole. Ayesha saw it. She reached, stopped, did not smother. Let it die. The smell of paper smoke mixed with hide and horse became another smell, the smell of what was settled. Jonas led the horse out. It felt the colder air of night, snorted, dragged hoof across dry ground, striking a spark line against stone. It stopped at the sight of 3 barrels. Did not panic. It looked, ears turning click by click, counting each sound in the night like pulses. Its heartbeat drummed through the strap. I saw Jonas's wrist, where leather wrapped, rise taut. Kern stretched his free hand. He did not dismount. He wanted it in hand, not dirtied boots. Silas grinned, leather like a last word torn half. Only then did he extend his hand. The moment stretched longer than a breath. I thought the wind stopped. The wire did not hum. The coal did not crack. The cricket in the rut lay still. Only blood in my ear, thin, then gone. Jonas gave the worn silver bridle toward Kern. His hand did not shake. Kern's hand, broad as a shovel, took it. His skin rasped against leather, short and sharp. Jonas let go. The strap left him like water from a trough, not seeking the old channel. Its dull silver fell into the night, went out at once, like an eye forced shut. The horse whinnied. The first note high, then dropping, stretched like thin sheet iron bent slow. It dragged a hoof half around, sand striking Jonas's pants with dull pops. Nolan tilted his barrel down 1 notch, wary. Silas pressed his stirrup. Kern jerked the reins to himself, hard enough for the horse to know whose command it belonged to. The horse tossed its head, white of the eye flashing once, then gone as night swallowed. Ayesha did not rise. She laid her full hand on the step, pressed hard, her nail scoring a short mark in the wood. The mark was not deep, just left a trace. She looked at that new line, as if reading the name of a road not on maps. Her cheek did not move. The scar stayed flat as thread. I swallowed dry. Saliva thickened, slid down slow, snagging at my collar. The sound was so faint only I heard. The wind went on with its work. Dust over the plain still lifted in layers. The fence wire gave back its broken hum. The stove coal cracked another line, flared red, then dimmed. The bounty slip lay still, its blank side down, the burned hole cold. Kern wheeled his horse. Silas tugged his reins, pressed heel, spur ticking faint. Nolan backed half a step, muzzle following. No need to threaten more. The 3 horses swung, dust rising to their knees. Jonas's horse snorted hard, white foam clinging to its lips in the night. The worn silver strapped tight in another hand, vanishing into dust like a snake pulled to its den. Jonas stood where he was, hands down, palms marked by strap back like cold burns. He did not turn. I saw his bent back, braced to stay straight, like a beam tied to a post to keep from bowing. Ayesha still sat low, her head not lifted, her shadow cutting a strip of moonlight on the step. The night closed its mouth, swallowed the last whinny, and in all the silence one thing still spoke without word, the empty space on the porch post where the strap had hung. It left a faint silver rim on the wood, then went dark too. Jonas did not turn, where a ring was just removed. Ayesha slumped on the lowest step. Her hair fell, laced with fine dust. Her nails scratched dry earth, not hard. The earth broke into small pieces, brittle, gathering in lines like a pencil snapped. She stopped, pressed her fingertip into the groove, held it there. She did not weep. The scar on her cheek dulled with dust. The back of her shirt stuck with sweat, salt halo showing faint, like old water stain on basin edge. I saw her hand tremble one short beat, then not again. Jonas stood still. His shadow stretched over half the step, shifting with wind. He looked once more after the fading dust, then turned into the house. His walk not hurried. Inside, the stove held only dying coals, the iron pot open, smell of cold iron, mixing with ash. On the table sat an old ceramic bowl, and the tin cup overturned. He lifted the cup, set it aside for space, poured water from the clay jar. The water ran round the rim, bubbled faint, then disappeared into wood sound. He carried the bowl to the porch. He set it beside her old one, the distance the width of 2 fingers. The new bowl still warm from his hand, the old one cold through. Moisture on the new rim drew tight into a small line, then gone. The wind shifted. Dust fell on the surface, floated to the edge. Both bowls lay still, their water the same color, neither raised to lips. Ayesha glanced once at the pair. Her eyes dropped back to the step. Her thumb rubbed the line she had scratched, thin as stray stitch. She uncoiled the black thread in her hand, pulled it taut, broke it easy. The short piece dropped between her feet, lay flat with the grain. She did not bend to pick it. The wing beat of a cricket in the sill, cut through the air, stopped at once when someone shifted weight. Jonas sat on the step above her. He stretched his back, very slow. The joint gave a faint pop like a finger against a cup. He looked at the gap on the porch post, did not touch it. The palm of his hand still bore the dark welt from the strap, running to the folds of his fingers. A blister swelled there, coin-sized, its rim wet. He did not bind it. He only closed his hand, opened it, testing how far skin still drew. Dust settled over the plain layer by layer. The sky split back into faded bands. On the wire fence, the clothes from morning flapped once and lay still. The wash stain dried to salt. The wind rasped over it like sandpaper. In the stall, the saddle rack stood bare. The girth strap hung loose, its end knocking wood faint like a beast dreaming breath. Night thinned like a lamp running dry. Only small sounds remained. Coal cracking, cricket pulling back, wind sliding slats. Jonas rose, went inside, smothered the coals, shut the stove. He lifted the 2 shells, none needed. The blanket lay on her like cloth over a hot stone, cooling. I slept a short while, woke at an uncertain noise. The yard was empty. The door not moved. The table inside showed a mark where someone had touched. A line of dust wiped clean, straight, from edge to middle. No shadow of man. Only the faint smell of fresh horsehide and the dry mud mixed with cheap liquor trailing in the wind like words lost. I did not wake Jonas. Some things known cannot be changed. Morning, sunlight swept the door latch, the table edge, the porch post where the strap once hung, now only a pale line of wood. On the table, between the shells Jonas had placed close, lay a strip of leather. Small, the cut edge fresh, its pale grain exposed, the surface dark, old horse sweat marking it in patches. One end notched with a triangle, fitting exact the chip on the bit I had seen too many times. It lay square to the new dust mark, like someone wanted to nail a word into the grain. I reached out, touched lightly. The smell of leather struck the nose. The old sweat of the horse just gone, mixed with another hand's scent, sharper, sour. That smell laughed quiet into the face. Not to return an item, to remind. I drew a fingertip across the cut edge. The knife had not gone clean. A dull blade. The hand forced, hurried. Just enough to tear a piece and set it here, while night fed on men. Beside the scrap lay a flattened lump of dried mud, stamped with the faint mark of a spur. No footprints on the floor. Whoever it was knew wind and dust as their own house. Jonas stood at the door, staring at the scrap. He did not touch. His right hand closed halfway. The blister split another line. He opened a small drawer, took a clean rag, set it beside the leather as one might lay a scarf next to a bald head. Ayesha stood behind me. She looked past my shoulder, eyes landing on the white cut edge, no expression. She leaned slightly to avoid touching the table. Her shirt back was thin, the seam along her shoulder standing clear. We ate through the meal with the last of the cornmeal. Jonas stirred it thick, without salt. Ayesha did not eat. She set her hands around the bowl, as if to draw its warmth into her palms. The warmth was little, died fast. I pushed the bowl aside. The scraps, the pump. The cold water curled the blister, drew more out. He dried it on his shirt hem. Blood stained brown into one corner. Noon passed in the shadow of the fence, shifting half a yard. Wind pushed a dry leaf against the step. The water bowl still sat on the porch. Dust speckled their surface. Both cold now, both looking the same, so one could not tell whose was whose without the small crack at the rim. I turned them both down, the sound of it steady, like a stone placed in the bed of a stream already gone dry. Evening. Dust rose far off in a low line, not horsemen's dust, the dust of those walking. The smell of dry sage reached the porch before the shadow of a body passed the post. Ayesha returned. In her hand a bundle of dry herbs, sage, plantain, a few stems of golden chamomile not yet opened. Tied with hemp fiber, she walked straight to the kitchen, set the bundle on the table beside the scrap of leather. The branches scraped the wood with a fine sound, like a pen scratching rough paper. The sharp, clean scent pressed back the old leather smell, moved it a little, but did not erase it. She did not look at me, nor at Jonas. She untied the hemp, tore a few leaves, rolled them between her fingers, dropped them into the ceramic bowl overturned. I lifted the bowl. She gave no sign. The leaves mixed with water brought up bitterness. Jonas stood across the table, his right hand on its edge, the blister damp. Blood seeped out in one dot, dark as the center of a chamomile. Ayesha looked at that dot. Her hand went to her hem. No pause. She twisted a small strip, pulled, tore it with a dry sound. The edge frayed. Dust of cloth rose, then sank back to the table. She placed the strip on Jonas's left palm. He did not pull back. She said nothing. Jonas said nothing. He lifted the strip, wrapped it round the blister. One turn. Two. The knot neat, set slant across the back of his hand so it would not press when gripping. He dipped the knot into the bitter water. The cloth drank. The leaf color bleeding dark. The sage smell thickened. It brushed against the scrap of leather on the table, pressed the leather's smell back another step. The two scents shared one space without mixing. I looked at the knot. It lay at the spot a rider would place it, when knowing he would need to draw the reins hard. Steady, not adorned, enough to carry the day. Ayesha gathered the rest of the herbs, hung them from a nail by the window. The hemp end brushed the wall, left a round dust mark. She did not touch the scrap. She passed the table, stopped by the 2 shells. She turned one upside down, the sound of brass on wood short and blunt. No more. Jonas lowered his hand, tested its movement. The bandage breathed out a drop of bitter water. Yesterday's black thread still lay. With the toe of his boot he pushed it off the step edge, let it fall into the crack. No sound. The evening wind carried the smell of water from far. On the fence, the shirt had been taken down, now hung inside on another nail. The salt mark on the wood remained, half-moon shape. I carried the bitter bowl toward Ayesha. She shook her head slight. Not for her. Jonas did not drink either. The bowl stayed between. When the sunset touched the surface, the dark green shifted into a band of brown like wet earth. In the small room, 3 things lay in line. The scrap of leather cut from a strap, the bundle of dry herbs, and the white bandage on a man's hand. No one spoke. We heard the wire fence sing one long note, then cut. That sound passed through us, left behind a clean, cold gap. In the middle of that gap, the worth of a good horse was driven quiet into the table by a scrap of hide. And while that worth had not yet faded, a strip of torn cloth, binding the wound, turned the cold into a thing to be done. No one explained, no need. Each thing stood in its place. The smell of old hide, the smell of bitter herb, the knot slanting, and 2 people facing without looking. Outside, dust settled on the grass like a thin layer of salt. On the porch step, the nail scratch still showed. Shallow but visible, a narrow line pointing into an evening without wind. The 2 bowls on the table sent up thin steam. The steam climbed a short way, then stopped, like damp threads, too heavy to lift. I sat sideways on a chair, hand on the table's edge, listened to the water in the bowls, draw tight as it cooled, a small sound like teeth against porcelain. Ayesha stood at the window, her hand on the dry bundle hanging by its nail. She plucked a sage leaf, rolled it in her palm, let it fall to the table. The leaf lay still, did not turn. Jonas sat opposite, his right arm bound with the white cloth slant knot, the bitter water soaking a faint green stain into the edge. In the stove, the coals were gone, only the smell of cold iron and old smoke clinging to the walls. On the table, the 2 shells stood upright, brass dulled under dust. The scrap of leather lay between, its edge darkened where touched by hand. Jonas did not lift it. He only moved the bowl closer to Ayesha by the width of a finger. She did not drink. She looked into the rim, as if into a deep well without the bundle of herbs. The dry fabric made a thin rustle, like an insect drawing lines across a leaf. She bent to look at her hand. The tear in the hem of her dress had left frayed edges, like the leather rim at the scrap's head. She did not smooth it. She left it. Jonas took the dull eating knife from the window ledge, scraped the dry grime off the table's corner, gathered it into a small pile. He pushed the pile to the edge, let it fall. No sound. The 2 bowls on the table stood close. The thin steam gone first, the water cooled after. I smelled the bitter herb, sink beneath the damp wood's smell. Ayesha pulled a chair, sat so that her back just touched the light falling through the window. The scar on her cheek did not rise. It only shifted color in the light, then returned to a thin gray mark like a pencil line. She set both hands on the table. Her forefinger touched the rim of the cold bowl, held, released. Jonas rose. He went into the empty stall. The horse's smell still clung in the planks. The saddle's smell, the sweat pressed into the wood grain, as stories sink into house walls after rain. I heard him run his hand along the rack, touching the saddle horn, the girth, the latigo, still where it had lain the day before, his hand against the dry leather. Sounded like someone reading softly from a prayer left unfinished. He did not stay long. Coming out, he crossed the porch, stopped at the post where the lighter strip of wood from the bridle still showed, like a scrape half done. Ayesha stood, walked to within half an arm's length of him. She raised her head a little. Her eyes touched the pale wood, then lowered. She unrolled a spare hemp thread from the bundle, twisted it into a strip, hung it on the nail in place of the strap. The strip sagged without weight. The wind turned it once, like a needle asleep. Jonas looked at it, neither smiled nor frowned. He reached, drew it down, coiled it, set it into Ayesha's palm. Then he went inside, opened the low drawer. Inside were broken pieces, a door latch with its spring gone, a brass button without a shirt, a strip of old leather spotted with mold, a rusted belt loop. Jonas took the old strip. He sat on the porch step, set it across his knee. It was not the worn silver bridle strap that had gone with the horse. This was another piece, from gear without a name. He rubbed it with his good palm until the grease of the hide came back. The sound, dry at first, then smooth. Ayesha, the hemp Ayesha had given. Not neat, not close, but firm. The white edge browned beneath his rubbing hand. The smell of leather warmed, mixed with the bitter still clinging to his bandaged palm. By the time the light thinned, Jonas rose. He hung the new strap on the old nail. Not a bridle, only its shape. Half length, one ring patched, the old scrap stitched in. The wind passed. It did not sing like metal. It only hung, soft, still. Ayesha looked at it longer than anything else that day. She reached, touched the stitched scrap, the place with the triangular notch, rested there one beat, then let go. Inside, the two bowls on the table had cooled. Dust darkened the water. Ayesha gathered the two shells, laid them flat, the stamped bases turned the same way. With her nail she pulled a thin line through the dust between them, a border like a marker. No one spoke of how the lines inside and outside the yard met, without needing a name. The evening wind swept dust over the porch. The hoof marks were gone. Where the horse had struck the night before was flat again, as if never. Only the porch kept one mark, the nail scratch Ayesha had made that night. The mark had not filled with dust. It lay with the wood's grain, darker by a shade, like a stitch that refuses to hide. Jonas washed his hands at the pump. The water ran over the bandage, carried a trace of sage green away. On his palm, the dark line from the strap had set brown. No pain now. He did not unbind. He only tapped the cloth, checked the knot. Ayesha stood at the porch's edge, turned the herb bundle so the broken branch lay against the wall, clear of the door. She gave no word to the act, only made it orderly. The sun sank behind the yucca line, left one last beam across the wire fence. The wire sang once more, longer. Wind pushed dust across the yard, over the porch, brushed Jonas's coat, touched Ayesha's shoe, went to the field. On the post, the bridle hung. It did not promise. It did not call the horse back. It only fixed the empty space with an object, as men pin a paper corner to keep it from lifting. In the house, I lit fire for warmth, not cooking. The coals snapped small. Shadows on the wall shifted as someone turning on a narrow bed. I pushed the bowls closer. No steam left. The herb scent gone, leaving the wood to speak. Jonas came in, sat at the table. Ayasha followed, pulled her chair, sat across. Between them lay the scrap, the shells laid flat, the thin dust line I had seen in morning, now thicker. On Jonas's bandage, the dark of the bitter water had dried into one streak. We heard the night close over the yard. No hooves, no voices. Only the murmur of wind through dry grass. Jonas set his finger to the table, tapped once, soft. Ayasha looked down. She pulled a corner of the light cut across the doorframe. I saw Jonas open the drawer, take the broken latch. He did not mend it. He set it back. He took the strap he had shaped the night before, brought it to the porch. He took it down, rubbed it again, then hung the old silver strap, another one, kept from some past season, on the nail. No piece of silver bright as the one before, but its form was true. The ring real, not rust. One end still marked with the old wear, where a man's hand had gripped through years. He hung it, stepped back half a pace. The wind passed. The strap hung loose, not heavy as with a horse's neck. It fell into a curve without anchor, half moon without a center. Light brushed it, gave no gleam. Only a dull lead shade remained. Ayasha stood in the doorway, watching. She laid her palm against the chest of her dress where the stitching was thick. One beat. She lowered her hand. No word. On the porch, dust covered again. The marks from yesterday were gone, but the strap on the post remained. It was still like a scar, not festering, not healed. Here, some scars serve as compass, not to return. Jonas walked past the strap without touching. Ayasha followed one pace, not close. I stood aside, hearing the strap speak by not ringing. Its noise already finished. What remained belonged to silence. And that silence knew the path. Through the kitchen, across the table, down the steps, out to the wire fence, back to the post, where the worn silver bridle hung slack. Like a thread not sewn into anything, yet holding the two edges close enough to keep the day from tearing further. By now, the noise had fallen into the ground. The horse was gone. On the porch post, only the worn silver bridle remained, hanging quiet as an old scar. Inside, the two bowls once steaming, now cooled together. A scrap of cut leather lay on the table, the bandage knot slanted across the back of a hand. No one spoke of law or lesson. Here, men chose their side through small acts, finished them, and left silence to keep the word. If something still knots inside you, a corner of anger, a trace of thanks, or only a question of cost, leave a short line beneath the video. Take it as one more knot tied into the strap, so when the wind comes, it holds. The story ends healed in its own manner. The rest belongs to each of us, and to the strap on the post, reminding that it was bound, unbound, and still there.